In a landmark decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that President Donald Trump overstepped his authority by imposing sweeping global tariffs under emergency powers. In a decisive 6-3 ruling, the court found that Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, known as IEEPA, was unlawful when applied to broad global tariffs. The reasoning was clear. The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to impose taxes. And according to the court, tariffs of this scale are effectively taxes. The tariffs in question were introduced in 2025, when Trump declared a national emergency, initially citing fentanyl trafficking from countries like China, Mexico, and Canada. But months later, the policy expanded dramatically. On what Trump called Liberation Day, tariffs ranging from 10 to 50% were imposed on imports from nearly every country in the world. The justification? America's trade deficit, which Trump described as an extraordinary and unusual threat. But the court rejected that argument. It ruled that IEEPA was never designed to grant presidents unilateral authority to impose sweeping global tariffs, especially those aimed at raising revenue. However, this ruling does not eliminate all of Trump's tariffs. Several key measures remain intact. That includes tariffs on steel, aluminum, automobiles, and lumber imposed under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, specifically Section 232. These are tied to national security concerns and follow a different legal process. But within hours of the ruling, Trump acted. In a swift and strategic move, he signed a new proclamation, this time invoking Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. This rarely used provision allows the president to impose tariffs of up to 15% for a period of 150 days. Under this authority, Trump has now introduced a new 10% global tariff on nearly all imports into the United States. This raises a critical question. Is this a workaround or a temporary fix? Because under Section 122, Congress must step in after 150 days. But experts say there may be a loophole. The administration could allow the tariffs to expire and then reintroduce them under a new emergency declaration. At the same time, the White House is exploring additional legal pathways. One of them is Section 301 of the Trade Act, which allows the U.S. Trade Representative to investigate unfair trade practices and impose tariffs in response. Another is continuing expanded use of Section 232, though that process requires formal investigations, making it slower to implement. Still, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has made the administration's goal clear: to maintain tariff revenue regardless of the court's ruling. That brings us to one of the biggest unresolved issues. What happens to the money already collected? Estimates suggest the U.S. government has generated around $130 billion from the now unlawful tariffs, but the Supreme Court did not address whether that money should be returned. That question is now heading toward another legal battle. Experts say the issue will likely be decided in trade courts and could take years to resolve. Large corporations are expected to lead the charge for refunds, as smaller businesses may lack the resources to pursue lengthy legal claims. Already, more than 1,000 companies have reportedly filed for reimbursement, and some political leaders are pushing even further. There are calls for direct payments to Americans, effectively turning tariff revenues into rebate checks. Meanwhile, new tariffs are already taking effect. Starting February 24th, the 10% global tariff applies to imports from nearly all countries, including major U.S. trading partners like the UK, India, and the European Union. But there are exceptions. Critical goods such as energy, pharmaceuticals, certain minerals, and aerospace products are exempt. So are items like books, donations, and personal baggage. Trade agreements like the USMCA covering the United States, Mexico, and Canada also continue to shield certain goods from tariffs. Still, the broader impact is significant. Global trade flows could shift. Prices for imported goods may rise, and uncertainty remains high for businesses, consumers, and international partners alike. What we're witnessing is more than just a legal ruling. It's a fundamental clash over the limits of presidential power and the future of U.S. trade policy. The court has drawn a line, but the administration is already testing how far it can move around it. And now, the world is watching. Will Congress step in? Will courts order refunds? Or will new tariffs reshape the system all over again?